Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen Francioli. I'm the founder of FODMAP Life. Thank you very much for joining us today. And this exclusive question and answer is only available to everybody who's a part of the FODMAP Life support group. So thanks again to everybody who has joined my group and who is listening in today. I'm very excited because we have Diana Reid with us. She's a registered dietitian. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her right now. She's got an extensive list of things about her that are pretty amazing. So she's an RD who lives part of the year in a tiny country of Luxembourg in Europe and part of the year in Seattle, Washington. She has a private practice that reflects her international background and counsels clients with gastrointestinal disorders, food allergies, intolerances, and other nutritional issues. She's completed the Monash University Low FODMAP Dietitians Training and the Advanced FODMAP Training for Dietitians course from King's College of London. And she holds a master's in public health from the University of Washington and previously worked in community and public health prior to starting her private practice. So welcome, Diana.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello,
it's nice to be here. As Colleen said, I am a registered dietitian, and here in Luxembourg, where I'm talking to you guys from today, in French, it is a dietitian diplômée. So I am truly international. In Spanish, which I also speak, it's a dietetista or nutricionista. And I've been a dietitian, let's see, about 6 years now, and then spent the last 3 years really getting nitty-gritty in the gastrointestinal space, studying with Monash University, as Colleen said, then also King's College, and I continue to do a number of different continuing education and ongoing training. So I'm looking forward to whatever questions you guys may have. And I know that this diet can be really complicated and challenging and sometimes frustrating or even disheartening. So any of your questions, any of your concerns, I'm happy to address.
And I wanted to say that Diana is also one of our FODMAP trained dietitians on the Low FODMAP Diet Beginners course. And she has provided us with videos and tons of tips and advice and handouts as well. If you are interested in joining the course, I'm going to hand out a code at the end of this Q&A for you to get 15% off the course. So again, if everybody can start rolling in your questions right now, we should be seeing them any moment here. And while we wait for questions, Diana, I mean, you could start to talk the diet if you like. Maybe, let's see, starting, who's become a client of yours, like maybe what's one tip to help them start the diet?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of different tips. The first thing I would say would be to make sure you have a proper diagnosis from your doctor, your GP, your general physician, or your gastroenterologist. This is a diet and a way of life that you don't undertake lightly. And you want to make sure that you're treating the right thing with the diet. So number one, I would say make sure that you do have a proper diagnosis of IBS, or that your doctor has otherwise recommended that you undertake the diet. The second thing I would say would be to definitely join a support group such as this one. There's a number of other online Facebook support groups to really just, you're going to need other people to bounce ideas and stresses off of. And then in general, I would also say make sure that you have detailed information about undertaking the diet, because it's not something that you want to do on your own. So working with a dietitian or taking a course such as the one that Colleen and I worked on can really make sure that you're properly prepared and you feel really confident and ready to go through all of the steps of the diet. Finally, I would say, related to that last one, make sure you understand that the diet is 3 steps and it's not a forever elimination diet. We want to make sure that you are nutritionally sound. And so eliminating too many foods for too long of a time can lead to some nutritional deficiencies and other issues. So we want to make sure that you're following the 3 steps, which are elimination, challenging or reintroduction, and then personalization. And Colleen, I see that you have somebody hopping up and down behind you. Mom life. All right. I'm not able to hear you just at the moment, Colleen. All right. I'm still not hearing you, but that's okay. Any questions yet so far? All right. Well, let me go back and just continue to talk a little bit about what I would recommend before starting the diet, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. I would recommend that you do some shopping. So get your FODMAP food lists either through this course or from your dietitian. Get some shopping lists and make sure that you feel prepared and you have a variety of different food choices, because there's nothing worse than going hungry and feeling really bad while you're trying to make yourself feel better with this diet. The other thing I would say would be, don't feel like you have to completely 100% change your diet. What we generally recommend is look at what you eat now, and then try and find low FODMAP options for any of the high FODMAP foods you're eating. So you don't need to come up with 100% brand new recipes and completely clean out your pantry or your refrigerator. Basically, what we want you to do is take a look at the high FODMAP foods that might already be in your diet and swap those out for lower FODMAP options. So as an example, let's see, you might be eating some kind of pasta sauce that contains a lot of onion and garlic. So instead of saying, I can't have pasta with red sauce anymore, what we would want you to do would be to look to a different sauce. So we do know that a couple of companies, such as Prego, make a sensitive sauce that doesn't include onion and garlic. So you would just swap that out. Or instead of making a homemade sauce with onion and garlic, we often recommend that people use onion or garlic infused oils. You can make those on your own, or those are also available from a number of different companies, including FODMAP Foods. So rather than thinking I have to completely start from scratch with my diet, what we want you to do is really just look for those high FODMAP foods and swap those out. There's no need to sort of recreate the wheel. All right, Colleen, are you there by any chance? I'm not seeing any questions yet. So let's talk a little bit more about why the diet is a three-phased diet. One of the things that we know about this particular diet is it is really effective at identifying the triggers for symptoms for those individuals with IBS. And every individual is going to have very different triggers. Some people may be sensitive to lactose. Some people may be sensitive to fructose. Some people may be more sensitive to the fructans in wheat. So not everybody is going to have the exact same triggers. So the point of the elimination process is to eliminate those really high FODMAP foods to try and get those symptoms to calm down so that you're feeling better. And ideally, you follow that elimination phase for 2 to 6 weeks until you're feeling better. And then we go into the second phase, which is the challenge or reintroduction phase. And the point of that particular phase is to really isolate one by one which of those FODMAP groups, whether it happens to be the oligosaccharides, such as beans and legumes and lentils, or perhaps it is the disaccharides, such as lactose, or perhaps it's the polyol, sorbitol and mannitol and xylitol, that are really causing you your problems. So the reintroduction phase is where we really hone in on which of those groups seems to bother you and in which quantity. Because it's really important that in the end, we liberalize your diet and that you have the most diverse diet, the most healthy, filled with variety diet possible to ensure your overall health. The other thing we know about staying in elimination for too long, which oftentimes people kind of want to do because they feel really good. So the whole idea about moving on to the second phase, to the challenge phase, is pretty daunting because people feel that they don't want to risk having symptoms again. But one of the things that I would want to remind you is that the elimination phase can be low in fiber, it can be low in calcium, it can be low in vitamin D, and a variety of other nutrients because we've removed some of those higher FODMAP foods that contain those nutrients. So we want to make sure that we bring back as many of those in as we can in that challenge phase and in that third phase, which is your personalized sort of long-term diet. The other thing that we know about being in the elimination phase beyond 6 weeks or so is that there are changes to the gut microbiota, the bacteria that are found in our gut. And we don't really know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It appears that there are less of certain types of bacteria. It doesn't seem that the diversity has really changed, the composition of our gut microbiota, but it is a bit concerning in terms of what other changes can that cause to our health. So we really want to limit our exposure to that elimination phase. And finally, sometimes what we find is if people have stayed in the elimination phase so long that their gut bacteria has changed, and it makes it more challenging and more difficult for them ultimately to reintroduce other foods later on. So for the best results, I want you to think about the diet as the elimination phase as something that is temporary, that is ideally something that you will move on to the next phases and go through the entire diet for the healthiest possible diet. Colleen, you're back. Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. I was just
Okay.
talking about the 3 phases of the diet a bit and talking about the importance of viewing the elimination phase, especially as a temporary phase, and several of the reasons why that is important in terms of our overall health and ensuring the diversity of our microbiota. Any questions that we have going on here?
I don't see any. So, the only thing we can do is we could just keep waiting for questions.
Okay.
And then other than that, just fill us with all of your knowledge, because we're going to be able to download this video later and put it on YouTube. So keep sharing your brain with us. So.
All right. Well, tell me about, maybe you can give me some hints on some of the questions that you've heard from people lately, or things that you've seen on the Facebook group in terms of questions, concerns.
Wow.
What have you been seeing lately from people that pops up as a concern?
That's a really great idea. So someone just asked a question 17 minutes ago. Does anyone have intense vomiting when accidentally eating high FODMAP? What could that be?
Wow. So typically that is really not a FODMAP symptom. So what we know about IBS and FODMAPs is that the FODMAP reactions tend to take place 6 to 24 hours after ingesting that FODMAP, and they take place, they really are centralized in the large intestine. So a vomiting reaction would be much more related probably to the stomach, esophagus, and maybe small intestine. So my guess is it would be not a FODMAP reaction, but it could be some kind of food allergy, or some other type of disease. There's something called cyclic vomiting syndrome, and those would definitely be something to talk with your doctor or gastroenterologist about, because it doesn't sound like something that would be specifically IBS or FODMAP related.
And then do you see Robin's question right there?
I do see Robin's question. Hello, Robin. Nice to see you. Navigating the holidays. Well, one thing I would say would be to go to FODMAP Everyday's website and check out some of their recipes, because they have some really great stuff. I think in terms of the holidays, and I've written a couple articles about traveling and things like that while in the low FODMAP diet, I would definitely think ahead and try and plan as well as you can for what you're going to eat, where you're going to eat. You may not always be able to manage that 100%, but try and think about, if you're going to somebody's house, can you bring a couple of dishes that are low FODMAP so that you know you have something to eat? Can you help educate friends or family that you're going to be eating with about some of the things, the ins and outs of the diet, so that maybe they can prepare some things that are suitable for you to eat? You can also, if you're going out to a restaurant, I always recommend that people look online and look through the menu first so that they have a sense of what they might be able to order, and or even call ahead and talk to the chef or the manager of the restaurant and see if they might be able to prepare something special for you. And then I always do recommend people, if you're traveling, if you're going to grandma's house for Christmas, bring your tummy kit. So I often recommend bringing sort of your emergency kit that would have something like peppermint capsules. It might have Imodium or Loperamide, any other prescription medications you take for your IBS, maybe a hot water bottle or a heating pad, just in case you end up in a place where you've been FODMAPed. Being prepared can often make you feel a little bit less stressed about it. And then the final thing I would just say would be try and enjoy and have fun. The thing to remember about IBS and the low FODMAP diet is if you happen to eat something that doesn't agree with you, that is high FODMAP, you're not damaging your stomach, your intestines, you're not hurting yourself. It doesn't feel pleasant, but you'll be okay. And the more you stress about it, the worse the reaction can be. So, go along with the ride and treat yourself nicely, do some deep breathing, do some yoga and all that, and just try and enjoy the time with your family and friends.
And here's this next question. For the reintroduction, why can't you just test the foods that are missed the most one at a time?
Let me see if I can understand that. So maybe the person is asking, and I hope I'm interpreting correctly, that there's some foods that they've eliminated previously and they really miss them and they want to add them back. So I'm going to go on the assumption that that's what's being asked. So if I'm wrong, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The reason that we want to go through the entire process is because, again, we want to have the most diverse diet possible. So a lot of times, by the time people come to me as a dietitian or start taking a course such as yours, Colleen, they've already eliminated a ton of foods and their diet is really spotty. They're missing a lot of nutrients. They may not even be feeling very strong or very, very healthy. So we really want to reintroduce as many foods back in the diet as possible, just for that overall health and well-being. But we also want to do, one of the reasons we usually reintroduce the foods, each food group in 3 different doses, is we also want to be able to understand which food group and in how much, in what quantity, tends to trigger symptoms. So again, that gives you a much broader array of foods to choose from. So let's say you find out that you're sensitive to garlic, but you can actually have a small amount. So you did okay on maybe day 1 and day 2 of reintroduction. Day 3 was pretty awful. But that tells you that if you go out to eat and there happens to be some hidden garlic in there, you're probably going to be okay. So you can relax and be a little bit less stressed. Or you can choose, every couple of weeks to have a little bit of something with garlic in it and know that as long as you don't do that super frequently, that you're still going to feel okay. So we want to be as systematic about it as possible to give you the best range of food and the best nutrition, and also just have an extra level of comfort that if you don't have control over your food, if something happens and you eat one of those, you can be calm and know, all right, I'm good. Hopefully that makes a little sense. What else do we have?
She or he said yes, that's exactly what they were talking about. So
great.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
And she or he says, it says Facebook user, so I'm not sure if it's she or he.
Okay.
Said, many of my clients are impatient and want an easier and shorter way to identify the problem foods.
Yeah. What I would say, I would add on to what I just said. And the only kind of way that I would say you don't have to reintroduce all of the foods would be if that client isn't actually going to ever eat that food. So as an example, I often have people who have had, let's say, lactose intolerance since they were children. They know that bothers them. They are not ever going to go back to that. And we've already discussed ways that they can continue to get calcium and vitamin D and all of the nutrients that might be contained in, say, dairy products. So in that circumstance, if there's a situation where the client or the individual really, really feels uncomfortable about it and isn't going to go there, and you have a strategy to deal with the nutrients that they're missing out on, then I think that it's fine to skip a group or two. Similarly, if somebody has celiac, you're not going to go through the wheat reintroduction phase. So there are periods or there are circumstances where we wouldn't necessarily need to do all of those. Finally, I would also say there's a number of what we call mixed challenges, where you're looking at foods that have a couple of different types of FODMAPs in them. So if you look at, say, a pear that would have fructose and sorbitol, you don't necessarily have to do all of those mixed challenges. They can be really useful if there are a number of, if you find that you're really, really sensitive to, let's say, 2 FODMAPs, you might want to figure out what happens when those 2 FODMAPs are combined. But again, it's not 100% necessary to go through all of those mixed challenges at the very end.
There was another question just in my group alone. The person said that their gastroenterologist said that aloe vera juice could help reduce inflammation in her esophagus. And she had her first drink this morning, said it was really gross. Has that ever been, she said she like plugged her nose and choked on it basically, but do you ever recommend that when you're working with people? No?
No. And in fact, I wrote an article for FODMAP Every Day for Robin and Day-Day's website on some of the top 5 IBS treatment myths, and aloe vera juice is one of those. There's really no evidence whatsoever that is helpful. And in fact, it can be really nauseating and can be sort of irritating to the gut. So personally, I wouldn't recommend that one at all.
Another person had a question, which, I mean, I can answer this, but does anybody know if these new Beyond Meat and Impossible burgers are low FODMAP? And I'm pretty sure they have garlic and onion in them and other spices and stuff. So, you know, like when people ask you that kind of a question, what do you usually say to them?
Well, you know, what's interesting is I will have to confess that being here in Europe right now, we don't have a lot of those. But I will say, and I wish I could speak to Robin right now, FODMAP Every Day. I know that Vanessa, one of the other dietitians on the FODMAP Everyday Success team, has answered this question. And I think there's an article on FODMAP Every Day about this. I feel like there's a couple of different kinds of these vegetable meat burgers. I think one of them is okay, but the other is not. But unfortunately, I'm not the expert on that one at the moment.
Yeah, I don't really recall myself, but I just tend to kind of make my own vegetable burgers at home, and it's I mean, it's pretty easy. Yeah. Like if you use like the correct amount of canned lentils and flaxseed and plain breadcrumbs, and I forget the other ingredients, but it's really easy. You can make a bunch, freeze some of them, and then have them, you know. So I don't even know if it's a burger, but yeah.
It's a great idea. It's not always practical, I'm sure, for certain people to, you know, it's sometimes easier to buy some of those things in bulk. If somebody does want us to follow up, I can double check my email on that one, and Colleen, I can let you know, and maybe you can get back to that person with the answer, because we did check those out.
Yeah, I'll speak with Robin, and we could certainly email that out.
Okay, great.
Here's another question. Can you review stacking and knowing how much of certain foods are okay?
Stacking. Stacking is one of those things that people get really stressed about sometimes. And I would say it often adds an unnecessary level of stress. But what I'll explain is the concept of stacking is really where we're combining different foods that have the same FODMAP in them, which means instead of having just a little bit of, say, fructose, we're eating something else with fructose and something else with fructose. And we're having a cumulative effect of perhaps too much fructose. And so the way that Monash has designed the app and the diet is they've tested different foods and the quantities that are considered safe, or a green light quantity, is tested to be something that will not cause a reaction in the majority of people that eat it. So that may or may not be you, but for most people, that green light serving is just fine. The problem is if we have, say, a green light serving of a type of fruit with fructose, and then we add some juice with fructose within a couple of hours, and then we eat perhaps something else that has fructose, then we have too much fructose in our gut, and that can trigger symptoms. So this is just one example using fructose, but it could be if you ate too much wheat and you ate too many products with wheat in them over the course of a short period of time. So what we usually say is follow the Monash traffic light schema. Look for those green light servings, and then try not to have multiple servings of the same category of FODMAP within a 3 to 4 hour window. Especially with fruit, it tends to be, because fructose can be a problematic food grouping. So if we have too much fruit, so we usually say don't have multiple servings of fruit at any meal, have 1 or 1.5 servings of fruit. But in general, now that I've described all that to you, oftentimes people are really, really worried about stacking and feel really concerned, and they feel like they don't know what to eat. In general, we find that as long as you're eating fairly reasonable portion sizes, and you've really cut out some of the things that are the typical FODMAPs that are the most challenging, which tend to be wheat and onion and garlic, you probably don't have to really, really get down into the weeds about every little serving that you're having, unless you find that you've gone through the challenge process, or I'm sorry, the elimination process, and you've already done 4 to 6 weeks and things just really aren't getting better. Then that would be a point to look at, well, are you perhaps eating too large of portions? Are you perhaps combining multiple servings of the same FODMAPs, and that might be causing reactions? But in general, I wouldn't recommend being really stressed about down to the gram of portion sizes, because that stress is counterproductive. Stress, as we know, can trigger those IBS symptoms. And it also, the diet does have some flexibility. You don't have to measure every single last gram, I promise. Hopefully that was helpful.
I think that's a really, really good tip, because I think people get like kind of super, scared about, oh, how much broccoli is, so yeah, that's really, really, really good advice. I think I really, honestly, from what I've seen with the low FODMAP diet, people are worried, like if they don't follow it like exactly to a T, or they get caught up in what someone else says, how the diet is or is not working for them, or what, and people have to remember that it's very individualized, and that, working with a dietitian is a way for you to really kind of accurately figure out what is going to work or not, work for you. And I just had one more question from the group. Someone had asked if they can take Beano while they're on the diet.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What I would recommend, so Beano is a digestive enzyme called alpha galactosidase, and it can help you better digest those oligosaccharides, specifically those found in beans. We usually do not recommend things like probiotics or digestive enzymes or other supplements during the elimination phase, just because if we've changed too many variables, we've removed a bunch of foods, we've added some supplements, we've changed a medication, we then don't know what is the cause of, hopefully, a reduction in symptoms. So we really try and keep the diet very structured and very sort of clean during the elimination phase. That said, if you find out in the challenge phase that beans, lentils, you did okay maybe on day 2, but again, day 3 was just really, really uncomfortable, that could be something that you could take. Something like Beano would be something you could take in order to be able to enjoy those foods more often, or in a situation where you're going to be eating out or traveling and you're not going to be able to avoid some of those foods. So there are a number. It's similar to lactase for lactose products. If you find that you're somewhat sensitive to lactose, but not incredibly uncomfortable when you have it, taking lactase tablets or drinking something like lactate milk that has the lactase enzyme added to it can be another way of increasing your tolerance to those foods. I'm just going to read something really quick because Robin sort of answered our question here. Robin Jaffin of FODMAP Everyday said that the Impossible Burger, there is garlic within the natural flavors and it's greater than 2% of the total ingredients, which means that you would want to avoid the Impossible Burger. With the Beyond Burger, it appears that the natural flavors were less than 2% in the past. So we thought they were okay, but now we're not sure. We're trying to get confirmation from the, and there's also soy protein concentrate in the Beyond Burger. So I think the bottom line is it goes back to what you said, Colleen. If you can, maybe try and make your own and find a good low FODMAP recipe for some of those non-meat-based burgers.
Yeah, and someone also had a question about mayonnaise and that it had soy in it. And I believe FODMAP Everyday has a really great, I don't know if you wrote the article, but I think they do have a great article on soy. I'll ask, I'll Google that, Robin. I'll find it.
Yeah, soy can be a complicated one because it depends on which part of the bean you're using, and that's the challenge. So if you're using just the protein, the protein component, not a soy concentrate, but if you're using, say, a soy milk that's made with soy protein, that is low FODMAP, but a soy milk made directly from the entire soybean, that is high FODMAP. So it definitely can get a little bit confusing, and that's where things like the Monash app and sites like FODMAP Everyday can be really helpful to kind of break down some of those multifaceted foods that can be confusing.
And why don't we end with this? What would you say is like one of the top things, like when you start to work with someone, what is like one of the top things that they come to you right off the bat with, like a question or a worry or a concern?
That's a great question. I think, most people that come to me have been dealing with symptoms for years, for 5 or 6 years by the time they get to me. And honestly, I think the biggest issue or the biggest challenge is they feel really skeptical and really disheartened and really like nobody's going to understand them. So one of the things I really try and do is let them know that they're not alone. And so I think things like what we're doing today and your course and groups, reach out to people. Don't go it alone. And I know that this is more general than perhaps you were asking, Colleen. But again, IBS is an issue that affects your quality of life, as well as your psyche and your emotions and your physical well-being. So anything that can help reduce stress is something that's going to help you feel better. So ironically, while I focus with on food a lot with my clients, I also try and reassure them that this is a diet that has been shown to work in anywhere from 50 to 85% of the people. It may or may not work for that person, but we will go through a very sequential process to try and get at the heart of what's happening, and they're not alone. So that was perhaps not what you were asking entirely, but I do think it's really important for people to not feel like they're suffering behind the scenes and nobody really knows they're out there.
Yeah, I think one of my most successful posts was actually from my IBS life on Instagram. I reposted something. It was a guy talking to a wall, and it's basically about like me talking to somebody about my IBS symptoms, and everybody went crazy. And it's very true. So I think like whenever I meet people that have IBS, a lot of times it's like there's a lot of other stuff that's going on,
Yeah.
you know, in their life. And then on top of that, you do feel very alone.
Yeah.
And it's something that people don't like to talk about. Like IBS Awareness Month in April is like that great time when people can kind of share, you know, they do more sharing about it then, but it would be great if we could really have more of an open dialogue about it all year, you know, and not have this stigma around it, you know, and there was a great article recently on New York Times, and, you know, they're saying that women do poop, women do have gas, you know, and it's all right. Like we can talk about these things together,
Exactly.
so, yeah.
The other thing that I would say is there is no one size fits all with this diet. And it's really important to get that diagnosis from your gastroenterologist or from your GP, and ideally at least have one consult with a dietitian, because you may or may not need to go through the whole diet. So some of the things we're finding out these days is it's not always necessary to go really deep and do the full elimination. In fact, Peter Gibson, who is one of the creators of the diet from Monash University, there's a paper out recently that outlines some of the pros and cons of this deep level of elimination. And for some of my clients, especially when I'm looking at adolescents or children, people where we really don't want to restrict their food that intensely, or we look at individuals that perhaps have had disordered eating or eating disorders in the past. So there's a number of different ways we can come at this diet rather than, you know, fully excluding. There are certain groups that we might try to eliminate first and see if that helps the individual before we go into the full diet. So I think that the thing that's really important is you want to have a really firm grasp of what your symptoms are, what your history is, what your specific issues have been, and then work with somebody in a professional capacity to make sure that you're doing the version of the diet that makes 100% the most sense for you and your symptoms and your lifestyle.
Cool. All right. Well, you know what? I have one more question if you want to take it. Otherwise we can. Okay.
Absolutely.
It was anything else that's okay to help with gas from beans?
There really isn't much else other than that digestive enzyme. There is probably some evidence that a probiotic supplement might also, in conjunction with something like a digestive enzyme, help. But again, we would look at doing that once you've finished the first 2 phases of the diet and you're at a place where you know what your tolerances are, and then you're basically kind of managing those tolerances. It's not something that we would want to do during elimination or even during the challenge phase. But understood, beans are great. They have lots of great nutrition, lots of fiber. So any way that you can keep them in your diet, awesome. You know, definitely do try and do that.
Cool. Well, this has been really awesome. I just wanted to offer a discount off the course. Basically, if anybody would like to join the Low FODMAP Diet Beginners course, it is here it is. It's FODMAP 15, and I will leave a link in this chat too for everybody. But basically, you get 15% off. I'm going to leave that on there for 24 hours, 15% off the course. And again, to let you know that Diana is one of the educators on the course. And like I said, there's a lot of information from her there on the course. And like we say, we never recommend that you follow the diet without the guidance of a dietitian. So that's one of the main reasons that I have, yes, I can open that for you. One of the main reasons, one of the things that we like to talk about, there you go, and, you know, repeat often that you shouldn't go about the diet alone. And then the other thing I wanted to list here was Diana's website. So again, you can find her at theglobaldietitian.com.
Yep.
And she is in Luxembourg right now, but she is licensed to do consults all over the world. So if you need further assistance, please get in touch with Diana. She's one of the top FODMAP diet experts in the world. And again, Diane, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining us today and for sharing all your knowledge with us. And if, again, anybody has any additional questions that we've not answered, you can also email me or put comments at the bottom of this video, and we will get back to you. So again, thank you, Diana. And would you like to say anything else in closing?
No, just thank you, Colleen, for the opportunity. And again, kind of reiterating, this can be a challenging thing to undertake. So we're here for you. If you have questions, feel free to post them in Colleen's Facebook group. Feel free to email me via my website, and just take it one step at a time. You'll get there.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again. And I hope everybody has a great day. Be good to yourself and your gut. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.